Welcome back to part 2 of Betting People with Steve Palmer. So we were talking actually about some of the ins and outs of punting just to the end of part 1. But of course, what people will probably know you for is your golf tips and the racing posts, which have hit some legendary heights. And I really want to get into the process that goes in behind giving those selections, especially each week, which is, of course, as any tipster knows, a very tricky task. So first of all, what stats do you most rely on? Are there stats that, for instance, like greens regulation or driving accuracy or sand saves or just putting, that will be the bedrock of your process?
Well, the start of my Mondays, it basically takes me all day on Mondays to work out who I'm going to be tipping on the 2 golf tournaments. Normally only 2 tournaments each week, sometimes more, sometimes less. But the initial process on the Monday is working out what the course is like, what sort of shape the course is in. Because even if you've played at the same course for years and years out, if the tournament's played at the same course every year, you can't just automatically assume that the course is identical to how it was last year. So you spend the whole morning on Monday digging around the websites to find out the exact dimensions of the course, the softness of the turf, recent weather conditions, and then you basically come to a conclusion after two or 3 hours on that, on what type of player you're looking to be backing, and then you get your entry list, which often is 156 players, and then you've got a sort of X Factor style audition for all of them. You start with your field of 156 players, and then you'll slowly during Monday whittle it down to however many selections you have. I try not to have more than 5. I know punters don't like it when you have more than 5. Sometimes circumstances force you into it. There have been tournaments where I just have 1. So between 1 and 7, I think once I had 7 players. So you spend all day Monday working out from 156 to a handful, and then you work out your staking plan from there.
Okay, with the courses, certain designs you mentioned frequently, Pete Dye, for instance. Are there certain course setups that you like to play at more than others, that you feel more comfortable with, and would you be more aggressive? Say, for instance, if you're doing Sawgrass compared to Roy Litterman's Nans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you've got reams of course form to go through, it does give you that extra bit of confidence. When you can clearly define the course characteristics, you get more punting confidence as well. There'll be some weeks where you go through that process I mentioned in the morning, and you're still not, you don't have that conviction of what sort of player you're looking for. So you may lessen your stakes that week. But when you feel like you've got a real strong handle on the course, I like to think I know the players inside out, so I know which players are suited to which courses, and then you punt accordingly. Yeah. There are times when the times when you feel you found out something about the course that no one else has found, because you can dig in some really obscure places these days if you get on the old World Wide Web, and you can find out reports that the odds compilers won't have found, other punters won't have found. If you find some knowledge about the course that gives you an edge, then obviously you get very excited and punt accordingly. But that doesn't happen often. I'm not blowing my trumpet like I've got some special place that I'm looking. But most of the information is available to everyone. But some weeks you're more confident than others, William, as I'm sure you know.
Absolutely. With the huge amount of golf tours that there are nowadays that you can bet on, how do you assess, say, form from different tours when they meet up? Would you normally rate form from the PGA tours higher than the European tour? There are the web.com tours where you get a lot of up and coming players. How do you assess players moving from one level to another? And would that change your calculus in any way? If there's a player that you've been really keen to be on suddenly goes up a grade or two, do you still carry that initial confidence, or would you take a watching brief maybe one week?
Yeah, you treat each case on its merits. I mean, the world ranking system gets a lot of stick, but I think it's as good as it can get, really. And perhaps the European tours weighted a little bit too heavily in the European in the world rankings. But you've just got to do the hard yards yourself. You look at each tournament that's taken place. You look at the strengths of the fields, and as you say, obviously a PGA Tour event typically is stronger than a European Tour event, and you make your calculations from there. It's a case of judging each tournament. You might have a load of great players in one tournament, but all massively out of form, so you don't, that race is not given as much credence as others. You've just got to have a feel for these things. If you just watch every single tournament that's taking place, and watch hours and hours and hours of coverage, you're gonna have an instant feel for the quality of these tournaments. So obviously a Challenge Tour event is going to be much weaker than a European Tour event. A European Tour event is going to be weaker than a PGA Tour event typically. You've just got to judge each case on its merits, William. I know a lot of people obsess these days with models. I don't know what sort of punter you are, William, but they type all the data goes into their computers, and then they'll type it into their spreadsheet, and then they'll tell them who to back at the end of it. I don't think you can work like that. I don't think that does work. I think you've just got to use your eyes and judgment and evaluate each player's performance from there.
Many people would agree with you, I'm sure. Actually, in analytics in sports is actually now, it feels normal now, but only a decade or two ago, it was something for very small section punting, and we might get into that later. One more course question, because obviously, putts win tournaments, and there are differing surfaces that you refer to quite often, and they make it into your course guide. So Bermuda, Poanua, etc. How much weight would you give to the type of putting surface that tournament's taking place on when you're making your calculus? And would it be more or less than, say, the rest of the course layout? So, for instance, how wide are the fairways, how soft can the course get, etc.
It would be less. It would be a bonus factor if someone putts well on Poana or putts well on Bermuda. It'd be the sort of icing on the cake. You say putts win tournaments. It's actually ball striking that wins tournaments. People are obsessed with drive for show, putt for dough. It's a expression that's well known by casual observers, but it's ball striking that wins tournaments. If you look at all the best players, their strengths tend to be ball strikers. Their strengths tend to be from tee to green. There's a lot of bad putters in the top of the world rankings. So I focus on who's going to perform well on the layout, and the strongest ball strikers are always, my instinct is always to go for the strongest ball strikers. Putting is, as I say, it's not as important as people give it credit for. I mean, the Masters, we're missing the Masters this week. We're all losing our minds that there's no Masters. People, a lot of casual observers look at the Masters and think, oh, it's all about the greens, isn't it? The fast greens. Who's the best putter? It's a nonsense. It's a nonsense because you look at the list of the last 10, 15 winners of the Masters. All strong ball strikers. Putting. Bubba Watson, one of the worst putters that's ever lived. He's won two green jackets. So I focus on tee to green class. I like backing players with tee to green class, and the minutiae of the grass they're putting on would be a fair way down my list, to be honest, William.
Oh, very interesting. And last not least, on the majors, do you have a couple of the majors that you are particularly strong with or feel particularly comfortable with? Because many punters are quite happy to punt on the Masters quite heavily. You seem to like the Open quite a lot, particularly going back from last decade when Woods was at his pomp. Are there any majors that you really look forward to for a punting sense over others?
Yeah, I think a serious punter has to put the Masters ahead of all the others by an absolute country mile, because the Masters is the smaller field. It's played at the same course every year. I think the bookmakers have fallen over themselves at the start of major season to give you all these fantastic offers. Your biggest bet of the year should ordinarily be on the Masters, I'd say. Your Open, I do like the Open. That's more of a sort of romantic thing for liking the Open, but the tee times at the Open open you up to Lady Luck so much. The first group's out sort of 6 a.m. and then the last group's out at 4 p.m. and that's in often in Scotland and in the north of England, when the weather is such a huge variable. So, yeah, sensible punters shouldn't be having big bets on the Open, because it's too weather dependent, particularly over the first 2 days. Whereas the Masters, usually beautiful weather. Oh, you got me back on the Masters, William. You shouldn't have done that. I'm struggling this week. The Masters is typically.
Sorry, we all are.
Yeah, amazing weather. Normally quite calm. So you can bet with much more confidence on the Masters. Then obviously the other two, they flit all over the place. So different courses, and the Open, of course. So you can't bet with a huge amount of confidence on them. So yeah, if I was advising punters again, I would say build your betting season around the Masters, and then have smaller stakes on the other three.
And just quickly, actually, sorry to put you through the pain of thinking about the Masters again. Who would you have backed for this year?
I don't know. No, they pulled the plug on that. I wouldn't have made that decision until the week before, and I just switched off as soon as I was furloughed. Rishi Sunak insisted I switched off. Actually, it's actually illegal to work during the period. So as soon as Rishi gave me my demand that I wasn't going to get me 80% unless I completely switched off, I did completely switch off. So sorry, I don't have an answer for you there, but I do have an answer for you if they play it in November. I mean, Rory McIlroy fans, there's a lot of talk about the Masters being played in November now. I have no idea whether it's going to take place. I'm not a coronavirus expert. I don't think many of us are, but all this talk of it being played in autumn, if it does go ahead in much softer conditions, then obviously Rory McIlroy be licking his lips, won't he? I mean, we're all desperate to see Rory complete the career Grand Slam, and he would have a better chance if it's played in autumn. But yeah, I like to cross bridges when I come to them, William. I haven't got an answer for you for that. Yeah.
No, I think that'll more than do. Thank you very much. We're going to take a little trip down memory lane in part 3, but thank you for watching the first 2 parts, and stick around.